welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell, that's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. Big Ten East win totals at hand. That means we're talking Ohio State, we're talking Penn State, we're talking Indiana, we're talking Michigan sitting on a 7.5. Lots to get to, and we will get to it all. But I don't even want to waste any time. Gentlemen, are y'all ready to count them up?
Let's do it.
As much as I think it's the under is a safe play, like I can't even.
Count them up! Count them up! How many games are going to win this fall?
I can't fathom 8 wins.
How many games are going to win this fall?
I just can't. I don't see it. It's not on there. It's not the schedule I'm looking at. Unless there's another schedule somewhere.
And we begin, again, at the very top. Most number of wins on the win total odds board. It is for the Ohio State Buckeyes. We've got 11 right there. No halves, just 11, minus 120 to the over, plus 100 to the under. We've got that massive Oregon-Ohio State game. The rest of the non-con is Tulsa and Akron. All 3 of those games are going to be in Columbus. The cross-division draw at Minnesota, at Nebraska, Purdue at home. Which way are we going with the Buckeyes sitting on 11?
I feel like I'm in the same situation where we were at last week with Oklahoma, where my play is the over because I don't expect I'm going to do worse than a push because, like you mentioned, there are some difficult games in the schedule. Like, you start off on the road at Minnesota, which shouldn't be too difficult for Ohio State, but still, you're breaking in a new quarterback and a lot of new players, and you're starting with a road conference game. So there's more jeopardy there than probably would have been if that game's in the middle of October. But then, of course, obviously, you get Oregon in Columbus in the second week of the season. That's going to be one of your biggest tests of the year. But I think that Oregon, for as high as I am on them within the context of the Pac-12, I do think that they've got question marks of their own that they have to answer, and it's going to be even more difficult for them in the second week of the season to go on the road to beat Ohio State. So I expect the Buckeyes to win that game. And then when you get to the conference, you've got Indiana on the road. Should be a tougher game, but I still think Ohio State's a well above a class above Indiana. You get Michigan on the road at the end of the season, and that's a situation where it's like, until Michigan beats Ohio State, I can't sit here and think that it's going to. They get Penn State at home. They get Michigan State at home. So I could see them losing one of those games. I do not see Ohio State losing 2. So I'm going with over, and I'm probably going to push it worst.
I already bet Ohio State -9 and -9.5 against Oregon. If you guys follow my column on 24/7 Sports, you should know where I'm going with this. I don't think there's any way you can justify going under if you're willing to lay double digits in the shoe against the Ducks. I really echo Tom's points. I think CJ Stroud will be really good. I think that Travion Henderson will have an awesome year. In fact, I think they're going to be so loaded. I think Master Teague could be 3rd string for the Buckeyes, and he's listed right now as a starter in a lot of publications. But reading Bucknuts.com, like, there's a lot of young backs in that room who I think are more talented than a guy like Master Teague.
So Henderson and who?
What's his name? I did our YouTube meeting with the Ohio State guys on Friday, so I have a little insider info here. Like, they're super loaded. I totally forgot the kid's name. I'll Google it in a second. That is to say nothing of what they have at the receiver position.
Mayan Williams, Marcus Crowley.
Mayan Williams, excuse me. Crowley, by the way, really good 7-on back for Pro Impact out of Jacksonville, and can catch the ball if they need him to. They have the best receiving core in the country by a mile. I'm interested to see what this new 4-2-5 defense with the quote-unquote bullet position does. But it probably won't be worse than leaving 3 linebackers on the field, 2 of whom can't really run, to cover Alabama's 3 and 4 wide sets. Just an opinion there. This is not a number that I'm really rushing to bet, to be honest. I don't see a ton of value in having to lay -120, but I agree with Tom's analysis. I'm just trying to find some other things to say about it.
I mean,
Same boat.
So I think the 4-2-5 defense would be the only spot where I wonder, like, are they going to be able to stop anybody, right? Like, if I have to nitpick, if I have to find a weakness, and then I go right back to pass the chalk, and guess what? They're going to be able to score more than everybody. No one's going to be able to stop them. So, you talk about that at Minnesota game. I mean, maybe take the over. maybe Ohio State becomes an over team if they haven't really shored up their pass defense, and if the new 4-2-5 doesn't solve a lot of the issues and a lot of the nitpicks that we had for them. But I don't see any team on the schedule that is going to be able to score as many points as I believe Ohio State will be able to score. Push insurance. I'm going on the over too.
I think traditionally you would never see me take at a total this high to take the over with uncertainty and inexperience at quarterback. The way I look at it, like if one of them struggles, they got a lot of options behind them. And I've told you here a few times, I swear, I think my 9-year-old daughter could come in. She could probably run this offense and put up numbers enough to beat some of these teams. I do think there's pretty good insurance that the worst case scenario is 11, like that you'll get the push. I'll be curious. I think we might have to have some show action on the Oregon game, depending on where that line settles. But it goes back to your point, like an uncertainty at Oregon. Like, are they going to just light up Ohio State secondary? Not from what we've seen. I don't see that happening. So I'm with you guys. I'm taking the over too, because I think it's a pretty safe bet.
Clean sweep for the Buckeyes.
How many games are going to win this fall?
Drop down 2 wins where we will find the Penn State Nittany Lions. 9 right there, whole number, plus 100 to the over, minus 130 to the under. All 3 non-con games at home: Ball State, Auburn, Villanova. A little bit of a tough cross-division draw. You got to go to Wisconsin. You got to go to Iowa. You've got to face Illinois. He's going to be at home. We've got the changeover at offensive coordinator. We are hoping that Sean Clifford is going to be able to overcome what looks on paper to be very challenging. Yet another offensive coordinator for your quarterback. The pass catchers, I know that from the Around the Clock series, that some of the insiders around Penn State are excited about that group and kind of what they can be. We, like the Pac-12, will often say in these Big Ten episodes, we kind of have to look at last year through a little bit of a different lens than we normally would. So for the Nittany Lions sitting right at 9, which way are we going?
Under.
I think there's 2 guaranteed losses. I think with Wisconsin and Ohio State, I see several games, not several, but Indiana, it'll be curious. We'll talk about Indy here in a minute. Like, Indiana got over that hump last year, and I'm sure Penn State will be motivated and they'll be reminded of the call at the end of the game, and that's going to bother them. But it's a lack of confidence in Sean Clifford. Like you said, we're all hoping he's there, and the other options on that roster aren't great. So they're kind of all in on Sean Clifford with a new offensive coordinator and a new offense again. I love the way this team finished last year, and they didn't quit. They came back, and I think they'll come in with some optimism. But I feel like 9-3 is probably the likely outcome, but I don't really envision a 10-2. I could see much more likelihood of an 8-4. So I'm going to take the under.
So I'm on the over, and I think that the one spot where we might be diverting is, or 2. Number 1, I'm kind of off Auburn, and maybe that's more sentimental or just sort of the general vibe that I've gotten. I might revisit my opinion on Auburn as a whole, but I've got that game as a win for Penn State. I agree with you. At Wisconsin's very tough, but I'm not really afraid of Iowa. Going to Iowa is difficult, but I look at this Penn State team as being very much on sort of its own level with Wisconsin, and then Iowa's maybe 5 points down, maybe 6 points down below that. And so I understand that it's a tough spot, but I will give them that win. So with Auburn and Iowa chalked up as wins, Wisconsin's a loss, Ohio State's a loss. And then I agree, 9-3, 9-3, I think is probably where we land here. But I do have confidence that this Penn State team maybe is getting priced in a way, especially with the plus value to the over, where we are overreacting a little bit to last year. So probably 9-3, but when we've got to pick a side here, I'm going over.
I think the last thing Chip said is the most important part for my pick here. I'm going under. I'm not betting this at Will Hill with the under, but I might. I would probably not take the over with the Will Hill number. I actually agree with a lot of Chip's reasoning. I wanted to take the over, but for for the cover 3 picks, we have to use Will Hill odds, which are minus $1.30 to the under on 9. But a lot of other books are sitting at 8.5 minus 120 to the over. And those are some books I respect, and I know will take action from guys who are pros. So like I can't for the show take the over on 9 where I feel like I'm already giving away a half win. But I don't hate Chip's analysis of this at all. I am contractually obligated to praise Parker Washington here because on a show in like maybe March, I didn't. And Parker Washington's very good. And he's a really good receiver. They have to get some of these transfer defensive linemen to step up. Sean Clifford still scares me. I do think James Franklin's a good guy as far as managing a program. At Ohio State, to me, is their only like lock loss. But I do feel like they're going to be probably less than a touchdown favorite against on the road at Maryland, maybe at Iowa for sure. At Wisconsin, they're already a dog. At Michigan State, are they laying double digits there? Home against Auburn, I guess we'll see. I don't really trust Auburn.
At Michigan State is scary. Michigan State's a chaos team.
And Michigan, by the way, has played Penn State well. In fact, one of the arguments that you catch from Michigan fans when you're like, hey, why don't you get on James Franklin like you do Jim Harbaugh? Like, well, because James Franklin has actually had the crescendos, right? He's actually won the Big Ten and done that kind of stuff. Whereas Harbaugh has more just been good with like, hey, the analytics say this team was better than their record repeatedly. But they have, to their credit, Michigan's credit, they've played Penn State pretty well. So I can't put that as a lock. So I guess I'll go under there.
That game in Happy Valley, too. If that game was in Michigan, and Michigan, what team would get to in a little bit, my home road splits on the way that I look at Michigan games are pretty noticeable.
I agree.
I'm on the under too. I mean, the correct answer at 9 is the push. I think this is a 9-3 team. And if there's 8 and 5s out there, 8.5s out there, you can go over there if you feel like it. But this is obviously, I feel like the way we're all talking, and none of us really care about last year as far as what happened with Penn State. We're just kind of writing it off. And I think for good reason, because I think last year was just kind of an outlier for what Penn State is. And I think the new offensive coordinator will help. From people I've talked to, it's just a much better fit for Mike Yurcich. Has been a better fit for the personnel they have, and he's just been a better fit personality-wise in that coaching room. And I do think, like you mentioned, Parker Washington, Bud, with him, Jahan Dotson, Keandre Lambert-Smith, they have 3 very good receivers there that they can put on the field. The tight end, they have a guy, Brenton Strange, who was very promising last year, who I think is going to be able to kind of step up and take on a larger role in that offense. And I think a huge thing for them offensively is getting Noah Cain back. And if Noah Cain's healthy, that was like their run game last year. That was kind of what sank their offense overall, because if you think about like James Franklin teams in at Vanderbilt and at Penn State, typically his better teams have always had good run games. And last year, Penn State just really didn't have one. And I think getting Noah Cain back and the kind of big playability that he could bring to that offense will be a huge, huge boost to them. And defensively, there are concerns. They've only got one starter returning on the defensive line and PJ Mustipher, but Bud, you mentioned the transfers, Derek Tangelo from Duke and Arnold Ebiketie from Temple, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry, Arnold. But these were 2 guys that Ebiketie I remember seeing at Temple when I would watch. I saw a couple Temple games last year, and me, when I watch, I focus on the lines. He was a guy that just kind of flashed. He stood out. It was like in a couple of those AAC games, it felt like I was watching a guy that belonged in a different league than the one he was in. So I think that will help out Penn State's defense. The secondary should be good. I think there's a lot of talent there. I think that's a huge thing, especially if you're going to even dream of competing with Ohio State. You need a strong secondary. So I think that's a boost. So I do think this is a team that's going to win 9 games, but the schedule's really difficult. You get Washington on the road. You've got Ohio State. You've got Auburn. You've got Michigan. You got Michigan State. I think Ohio State and Wisconsin are probably losses. And there's a very good chance you're going to love one of those other games. That road trip to Iowa, another tough game for the Nittany Lions. So I think 9-3 is the right answer, but I think 8-4 is more likely than 10-2.
I love going against the group.
You really are. You are like the show contrarian this year. Like Bud, Danny, and I are in lockstep, and you're over here like, nah, you're idiots.
Nah, it won't storm. I can get 18 in. Let's go. That's what it feels like.
Count them out.
The Michigan Wolverines, 7.5, minus 135 to the over, plus 115 to the under. Changeover at defensive coordinator. Don Brown is out. Year 2 of the Josh Gaddis offense. We've got Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy, Are you going to get the guy who took over as the starter at the end of the season, or is this true freshman who, remember, Michigan didn't have a spring game, but they had a social media presence of whatever their final scrimmage or action was. And when you got to see that off-platform throw, everyone loves the off-platform throw. So JJ McCarthy hype is very much alive and well. Non-con, Western Michigan, Washington, Northern Illinois, just like Ohio State and Penn State, all three are going to be at home. Then the West draw at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, Northwestern at home. I mentioned the home road splits are very, very important to me when I'm looking at Michigan. I think the fact that the Indiana game and the Washington game being in Ann Arbor are what get me to over 7.5. I think if either one of those games were at the other location, I would chalk them up as losses and they would have me going the other way. And as I get us started with an over here for the Michigan Wolverines, my third straight over, I acknowledge that at Michigan State is a very, very, very dangerous game. But I mean, I don't think that Mel Tucker's going to get 2 in a row, right? I mean, there's got to be something within that rivalry where that Michigan team is not going to let a Michigan State team that is not as good as Michigan beat them for the second straight season. But very, very scary, very dangerous. I will be going over the 7.5.
I think right off the bat, based on the Michigan that we've seen the last few years and the Michigan that we know, so what we can expect reasonably, there's 3 losses already. You're losing at Wisconsin, you're losing at Penn State, and you're losing that Ohio State game. Then there's the Washington game, which I do have Michigan winning. Like I bet it a couple months ago. I got Michigan plus 2.5. I think it's minus 1.5 most places now. I think they're going to win that game because I do have questions about Washington myself. But you look around, like at Nebraska, that's not a guaranteed win for Michigan. I know that Nebraska's down, but road trips in the Big Ten, especially when you're going out west from the East, are difficult. Northwestern's a difficult game. At Michigan State, that's a rivalry. That's a difficult game. Indiana is going to be a much more difficult game than it's ever supposed to be. And Indiana has always been a tough test for Michigan in recent history. At Maryland is a tough test. My pick is over. I've got them going 8-4. But my level of confidence in it is not great. I don't think 7-5 is completely out of the realm of possibility here. Although I do, somewhere in the back of my mind, just have a really difficult time imagining a 7-5 Michigan team that's not coached by like Brady Hoke.
So I kind of think, Tom, like for you and everybody else, do red flags kind of go off in your mind when you see 7.5 for a 12-game season?
I mean, what it's weird to me, we'll get to them, I'm sure, next. It's like, think about the fact that we're at a point where Indiana and Michigan have the same win total.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. With that said, I am going to go under here, mainly because I get plus money to go under. It's minus $1.35 to the over, so I get plus 115 on the under. I think this is kind of coin flippy. I think a 7-5 happens a lot. I think 8-4 happens a whole lot, but I also could see like 6-6. I could see 10-2. I think there's a big range here. I don't really want to be paying extra juice for a team that I don't have a whole lot of confidence in either way. People who, like obviously people on this very show, right? In addition to other people I follow are on both sides of this. So just go ahead and get me the under. I do have some concerns about the new defense they're trying to install. Now, the last time that Harbaugh went out and got a defensive coordinator on the recommendation of somebody in the NFL, it was Don Brown on the recommendation of Bill Belichick. That worked out pretty well for quite a while until it didn't. Now, the new guy comes in on the recommendation from his brother, who coaches the Baltimore Ravens, obviously, John Harbaugh. But I don't know, man. Like from talking to Sam Webb of the Michigan Insider, who does a tremendous job, and if you guys are Michigan fans, you're absolutely missing out. If you're not over there. He said that like losing Jay Toya, the defensive lineman who transferred there real quickly and then ended up transferring back to UCLA when he didn't think he could go to UCLA. He told me they thought there was a pretty good chance that he would start at Michigan and that was a big blow. And there's some teams on this schedule that can really run the football. And you're not getting Jay Toya for the pass rush, right? You're getting him because he's he's a fire hydrant. Yeah. Now, they did get Whitley from Oregon State, who is not bad, but I don't know that he's necessarily the exact same impact. I mean, Washington runs the ball. I think Penn State will look to run the ball a lot more. Their backs are healthy. We know Ohio State can run it. Wisconsin pretty good running team. But I could get burned on this. Who knows?
Yeah, I think you hit the head on the nail there. This is a team with a wide range of outcomes.
I'm going to take the over. I think this is one where a lot of people are down on Michigan because of what happened last season. And it was the team quit on them. The team threw in the towel. But of all the programs that I think would be more susceptible to quitting, I look at Michigan as a program who prides themselves on competing with, for Big Ten division titles and being right there with Ohio State. And I know it hasn't been there. But I feel like once that season went a little sideways, they just threw in the towel. Then they started, Don Brown, he's on the, he might be out. Then it's even easier to throw in the towel. I think the infusion of life is something that Michigan has needed. A younger staff, more current with today's player, able to relate. There's also something to be said about Jim Harbaugh, which is not very easy, and it's always been his downfall, is what do we hear? He goes places 4 to 5 years, and then people get worn out. People get worn out of it. I think even some coaches on that staff got worn out from being around Harbaugh. Now you get a new staff, a lot of new staff members. They're fresher. They're buying in. I think that enthusiasm could buy in from the team as well. So I think Michigan's a team. This was one of my better, more confident plays, I felt, was taking the over with Michigan. I think Joe Milton was a problem at quarterback last year. Was not very good, and that was an issue. I like what I saw out of McNamara. If that doesn't work, he's got to develop. Sooner or later, it's like looking up at the roulette table and you've seen so many black. Let me take red. Like eventually Harbaugh's got to be able to develop a quarterback, right? He's got to be able to hit on one of these. So maybe it's a little bit kind of wishful thinking, but I look at the schedule too and I see, man, I feel pretty confident about 8-4, which was the norm. Like that was the low bar before this season. So I don't know. I'm taking the over with the Wolverines.
I will say, I hope you're right, because I just, as the Big Ten guy here on the show, like the perception of this conference nationally, Michigan has such an impact on the way this conference is seen, right or wrong, accurate or not. Like if Wisconsin, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Penn State are all really good, and obviously Ohio State's Ohio State, people, and Michigan's like 7-5, people think the Big Ten sucks, even if those teams are better than most other teams. So when Michigan's good, those other teams can be kind of having down years, but if Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State are all good in the same year, everybody thinks the Big Ten's good.
Magic, Jordan, Barkley, Bird, Malone, Ewing. The 1992 Dream Team changed the game of basketball forever. Dream Team, Birth of a Modern Athlete, is a brand new 5-part original series streaming exclusively on Paramount+. The documentary takes you deep into the greatest basketball team ever assembled, with never-before-heard audio interviews from the players themselves. Hear from the team as they break down the greatest exhibition game ever, Team Magic versus Team Jordan, and how the torch was passed. You can watch Dream Team, Birth of a Modern Athlete, the new 5-part series, now streaming exclusively on Paramount+. Count them up! The Indiana Hoosiers win total set at 7.5, over +105, under -125. The non-con is Idaho, Cincinnati at Western Kentucky. The draw from the West Division is Minnesota at home, at Iowa, at Purdue. I know our Cover 3 historian tuned in. He's ready to meme us for what we got to say about Tom Allen, who is Danny's boy. You want to take dibs on this one?
Yeah, I'm torn on this one, to be honest, because I do think, like, much like the Michigan play, I'm like, people are down and out on Michigan, and so you should buy them when you can buy low. Feel like there's a lot of optimism, and there's a lot of people that might be listening to Cover 3 the past year, like, this is the year to hammer Indiana. But I really am torn on this one. Like, I do feel like Tom Allen has built this team into a place where they're going to be much more competitive on a week-in, week-out basis. But then I go back and look at last year and I'm like, man, did they squeak by Penn State? How does that do? How does that work out differently? They do have a lot of returning talent. I'm going to go over on principle alone. I have to. I'm such a believer in my guy. Did you see when they all came over after and he was giving his interview on the sideline and they go out there and they play hard for him? I still think they have that chip on their shoulder. Pennick's coming back. I think a lot of returning experience, except for running back, where Stevie Scott bounced to the NFL. But running back is a position that you can replace. I just think this team is going to be a really tough out. And I like Michigan, we'll get to Michigan State, but I see 7 wins. Man, it's 7.5. It's our total.
Yeah. So tell me that you see 8.
I got to switch it. I got to stick to my guns.
Oh, we got to switch.
I'm switching. I'm going under. I got to go under. As much as I hope I'm wrong on this one, and I won't play it personally because I want to be wrong, but it's just hard. I just have a hard time finding 8 wins. I think 7-5 is the more likely, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 6-6.
I'm also on the under, and I'll use a phrase that there you go. There he is. Bud Elliott said earlier, I think about Michigan is there's just a lot of coin flippy games, just a lot of games that are going to go either way. And they were the beneficiaries of some good turnover margins and I mean, whether you believe in turnover luck might be how you feel about the Indiana win total. But as I break down the schedule, I think they're 2-1 in non-con. I've got Cincinnati as a team that I think is going to be able to win that game. I've got them 2-1 against the West. I don't know which 2 or 1 it's going to be between Minnesota, Iowa, and Purdue. Again, kind of coin flippy through there. So if it's 2-1 and 2-1, then I ask, can you go 4-2 against division opponents? And I do not feel confident enough that Indiana is only going to have 2 losses against division foes. You give them Ohio State, and then you're only allowed 1 more beyond that, like Penn State, and then a Michigan too. I just see this as a game where a season where Indiana's could be very, very competitive. But if you're going to make me pick this win total, I'm also going to be going on the under.
It's under here for me. I think they actually could lose at Western Kentucky.
Whoa. For real?
Yeah, for real. Western Kentucky imported almost all of that Houston Baptist offense that hung 55 points on Texas Tech last year, including the OC and the QB and one of the good receivers.
Good note.
Yeah. I have them more likely to miss a bowl game than I do go to 10-2 or better. They were very lucky last year. They play extremely hard for Tom Allen, extremely hard. Like they really do. It makes me more hesitant to bet this under. The best bet you could have made was when this came out at 8, because 8 is just something you need to just absolutely unload on, right? 7 is way more likely than 9, in my opinion. But 7 is still more likely than 8. Michael Penix, his efficiency numbers, not particularly good, right? He's also coming off.
He's a gamer. He tries hard.
But he was out. Like does the narrative change if they get that call right? Oh man, our historian's going to kill us now. I really do think they do a good job with player dev at Indiana. I think they're pretty solid schematically. Their recruiting is pretty damn good for who they are. And yet, if you do this, you're basically. When's the last time Indiana won 9 regular season games? Or
right?
Very rarely. No, I don't think they get to 9.
They fell short because it was the dream of the 90s. Like they were trying to accomplish a lot of things that had not happened since the early 90s in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. So okay, the last couple of years, 8-5, 5-7, 5-7, 6-7, 6-7, and then what they did last year, obviously in the shortened season. Give me the under.
I'm on the under too.
Andrew is going to kill us. He's going to meme us into oblivion.
We may still be accepting applications, by the way, for our historian after he hears this.
I'm going to respond to his email right now just to say apologies in advance for what you're going to hear in that Big Ten East win total. Tom, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I just it's along the lines of what everybody's kind of been saying. I think they're going to go to a bowl game, but I do think that the schedule is somewhat difficult. And I do think that, don't give any of it back, but Indiana did have the coin land on, it had some luck last year in the way a lot of games went and a lot of things turned out. We mentioned the turnovers. And again, I know I got whatever for this from Indiana fans a lot last year, but like Indiana's turnover points off turnover margin last year ranked 10th in the nation. They were plus 41. But more importantly than that, they scored 231 points as a team on the season. 65 of those points came following turnovers. So nearly, so 27, 28% of their points came following a turnover. There was one team in the country that intercepted more passes than Indiana. Georgia Southern had 18, Indiana had 17. The difference is Georgia Southern played 13 games. Indiana played 8. They averaged 2.13 interceptions per game. That's not really a sustainable level of performance as far as turning the ball over through there. Like fumble luck is fumble luck, but I don't see how you can intercept 2 passes per game and expect that to be sustainable in the long run. And also,
Tom, you want a stat?
Yes.
All right. They were second in the country in the ratio of passes defensed to picks, right? 45%, national average 32. So almost nowhere to go but down there.
Yeah, and the second highest interceptions per game last year was Ohio at 1.67. So like a half an interception behind per game. And the fact that like Michael Penix only threw 4 interceptions last year, but to be blunt, Michael Penix should have thrown a lot more than 4 interceptions last year. He got away with a lot of throws that I don't know if he's going to be able to get away with, because I love the kid. He takes chances. He is not scared, but at some point you got to get bitten for some of the chances he's willing to take. So I think Indiana's a good team. Like Bud said, they play super hard for Tom Allen. I think Tom Allen has done a fantastic job with that program and has it headed in the right direction. It's just, I see 8-4 as more of a ceiling than an expectation. So I'm going under.
What level of team? Oh, sorry, Danny, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the Western Kentucky game that you said could be a possible loss. CBS Sports Network, 8:00.
Better watch it.
Go.
September 25th that weekend. Possibly it could be a Danny Cannell game. It's got it written all over it, but we'll have to see what the scheduling looks like. We'll have to see.
Are they making you guys go remote again?
No, well, it's all up in the air now. The plan was back to normal. That was 3 weeks ago. So keep you updated, because that was no fun.
We should road trip this.
Yeah.
To Bowling Green?
That'd be like a hilarious Cover 3 road trip. We all go to Bowling Green. That would be. So like, just to put this in perspective, none of us are really even debating Indiana making a bowl. Like, we're all pretty damn sure of it. That's a hell of an accomplishment by Tom Allen in of itself, right? We're like, can they make a bowl? No, we're talking about, can they get to 8 wins? Can they get to 9 wins? If you think about this, with this schedule, what level of team do you have to be confident that Indiana is? Not poll rank, but like in your power rankings, to be confident that they can get 8+ wins. Because to me, I think they're probably like somewhere between like 25 and 35 as far as team quality, and they would need to be more in that 15 to 20 range.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly right. And I don't know if I can get there with this squad.
Count them out.
The Maryland Terrapins over under win total at a whole 6 wins, plus 105 to the over, minus 125 to the under. You catch Howard, Kent State, and West Virginia all at home in the non-conference. West draw at Illinois, at Minnesota, Iowa at home. How are we feeling about the Terps heading into this season? Again, man, I'll go ahead and say that this is you can't look at Penn State and say throw it away, and then look at Maryland and then be like, but look at what you just saw. At the same time, it was a new quarterback. It was a new coaching regime. So I'm very I'm on both sides of this. I'll let y'all take a first stab at it. How are we feeling about the Terps?
I bet the over on 6 early in the preseason. I thought this was going to climb. It's the 1 win total that I bet so far that has kind of gone against me a little bit. I still like it. I'm still going over, right? Ultimately, I see Howard, Kent State, and the Rutgers game as very likely wins, which probably tells you what I'm going to do with Rutgers here coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I see at Ohio State as definitely a loss. Okay. At that point, are there any other guaranteed losses on their schedule? I think there are games in which they are certain to be underdogs, but I don't know that there are, guaranteed losses other than Ohio State, which is kind of weird.
I'm handing them Penn State.
Okay. Penn State at home. That's fair. I I mean, I don't think they're going to be like 14-point dogs, but they could be 10. I could see that. So to me, like, I think this is probably a top 35 caliber football team, given their explosiveness on offense. And that means they need to get me 4 wins to hit the over here out of at Illinois, at Michigan State, West Virginia, Indiana, Michigan, at Minnesota, and hosting Iowa. I'm not going to lie. Like, the over 5.5 looks a hell of a lot better than it did when I bet it. I just thought it was going to go up, so I locked it in at the time. Tennessee and South Carolina moved in my favor in pretty much all of the early ones I hit. Not this one. But I'm high on this team because of their offensive explosiveness, and I think several other teams in this division were incredibly lucky last year.
I'm on the under, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. I think Howard's a win. I'm not as sold on Kent State being a win because, like, I think Maryland's probably going to win that game, but Kent State puts up a lot of points. And defensively, Maryland was a team that kind of presented, I had concerns about last year. I think that's going to be a game where we're probably going to want to circle an earmark for an over, maybe in a locks pod in late September. But I think they win that game around 65, 70% of the time. But I do think there's a decent chance they can lose that game. I think that Ohio State's definitely a loss. And I think that the problem I have with this schedule in particular for Maryland is that we've talked about it with other teams. The games that they kind of need to win, like the games on their schedule that to get to bowl eligibility, that it's like you look at and we have to win. Those are mostly all on the road. Like Illinois, winnable game on the road. Minnesota, winnable game, but on the road. Michigan State, on the road. Rutgers on the road to finish the season. I'm not chalking that up as an automatic win for Maryland. I think Rutgers is an improving team. I thought Rutgers was pretty solid last year. So going through this, I think that Maryland's going to have a tough time getting to bowl eligibility. That's not to say that I don't think they can. It's just, I think more often than not, we're looking at a team that's 5-7.
On the under as well. I'm having a little bit of trouble finding some balance after all these overs that I did right at the top of the conference. And so, if all of these division teams, if Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan are going to be getting there, I think that unfortunately Maryland ends up on the other side of that. I'm also on the under.
I'm going to go under as well. Is this put Bud on an island? Is this
I'm
Bud
on an
by
island
himself?
on a bad number compared to the market, right? Because this is something that, like, it's 5.5 at a lot of places. If you want to take the over at this point, you should take the 5.5, not the 6. If you want the under, William Hill's price on the under is tremendous, by the way. It's very competitive.
You're on the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, seriously. I'm on the island on a bad number. Like I should just burn this ticket right now.
Is Talia their only QB? That's a scholarship quarterback. Like, they don't have much depth at quarterback. They're kind of all on the table, all chips on the table with Talia Tagovailoa, which he's shown flashes, but I just think there's a little bit of issue there if something happens to him or he doesn't perform, excellent. So I think they're kind of all in there. And I also look at the schedule, and I'm having a tough time coming up with 6 wins. So I'm gonna take the under.
Are you giving the Tua injury risk as genetic?
You probably saw me. I was about to go there, but I mean, have you seen the Bosa brothers? Like, yeah. there is something to that, know.
They came from the same.
That's all genetics, you think?
No, I don't know.
It's just being silly.
How many kids are gonna win this fall?
Then we drop on down to Michigan State, year 2 with Mel Tucker, carrying a 4.5 win total, -140 to the over, +120 to the under. Youngstown State, Western Kentucky again, and then at Miami is the non-con. West draw, Nebraska at home, Northwestern on the road, Purdue on the road. What are we doing with Sparty?
I'm over, but barely. There's some questions here for me. I still, because Michigan State had some good moments last year. Michigan State had some very bad moments last year. And for me, it's going to really depend on the quarterback play. I think that this team has like a bowl game ceiling if it gets solid quarterback play, but it's also a team that could finish like 4-8 or 3-9 if it doesn't really see improvement there. But like, this is a schedule that is somewhat difficult in that, you open at Northwestern, which is going to be a tough game. At Miami, That's a tough game. And I mentioned like the same kind of situation with Maryland, where those games that you want to count on to, like when you're looking for the 6 games we can win to get to a bowl, a lot of those games are on the road. Rutgers is on the road. Indiana's on the road. Purdue's on the road. And then you look at the back half of that schedule. This is a situation where like they start off with their first 7 games and then they have a bye. But then the last half, it's Michigan, all consecutive weeks, Michigan at Purdue, Maryland, and then at Ohio State, and then Penn State. That's a pretty difficult stretch for the Spartans to go through. And at the end of the year in particular, when you're probably more inclined to be banged up than you are early in the season. So this is a situation where I feel like they could enter November needing to win 3 games to get to bowl eligibility. And with Ohio State and Penn State being 2 of the 4 games on that schedule, that's not going to be easy to do. So I have them over, but again, I have them at 5 and 7. So it's not something that I'm very confident in.
This over might be my favorite bet in this division. Yeah, I think if you guys want to take this, go to Will Hill now and take it. I don't see this going down at all. The minus 140 to the over for me is a good number in my opinion to take. In fact, I think it's probably the best number on Michigan State if you want it over. I looked this morning at about 9 different books, and this is the best number I could find. So I think you're plus EV against the market here if you take this over. I'm a little bit worried about the quarterback play, of course, but I was
Can't get worse.
Right. I was talking to Bill Connolly this morning, and he was like, they really did a nice job of throwing on early downs and running on passing downs, right? Keep people off balance, which is true. But for the first 2 games last year, they did a horrible job of that. They basically just ran the ball every single down and were incredibly inefficient and did a lot of the punting in opponent territory, craziness. I'm like, oh my God, is Mel Tucker another one of these defensive coordinators who can't evolve into a head coach? And no, they totally swapped it around. They were much more efficient with their play calling down the stretch. I think that this coaching staff is excited about some of the transfers that it took as far as their ability to fill holes. Schedule-wise, I think they'll beat Western Kentucky at home. Youngstown State, again, I don't think they're going to have much problem with Rutgers. I'm very down on Rutgers this year, obviously, since I'm giving Maryland and Michigan State wins over Rutgers. At Northwestern, okay, tough game. It's the first game of the year. Nobody in the country lost more than Northwestern. So schedule timing-wise, I really love that they open with Northwestern. They get Maryland at home. That's a toss-up game to me. They go to Purdue. Purdue's probably a 1-point favorite there, ish, maybe 1.5.
Purdue at home.
If you give me more than a field goal with Michigan State going to Purdue, I'm going to bet Michigan State. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yes.
Then they get Nebraska at home, right? At Indiana, again, I think that's a winnable game for them. I don't think they're going to win Miami on the road. I love that they get Ohio State on the road, so you don't have to mess around with that. That's a loss if you play it on the moon. I think this team is going to go bowling.
I'm with you on the over, so I'm not I'm not out on you. I think that again, don't pay attention to anything that happened last year as long as we're talking about Penn State. But did you see this Michigan State team beat Michigan and Northwestern? Did you see that the Big Ten West champs took an L to Mel Tucker and this figure it out Michigan State team? I think that from the power ratings perspective, they are so comparable with a Maryland, a Purdue, a Nebraska. But I just what I saw them be able to take and the timing of the hire and the COVID shutdown. And I have a little bit more faith in Mel Tucker and this Michigan State coaching staff just because they were able to overcome a ton of obstacles in a season where otherwise I wouldn't have been surprised to see them go winless. And I would have given forgiveness for that. So I'm going to take Michigan State to the over. I'm going to give them the Maryland win. I'm going to give them Youngstown, Nebraska, Western Kentucky, and I think that they definitely can win one of. I'm going to give them Rutgers, and I think that gets me there. So, yeah, I'm going to go over.
I will say, Chip, I did see the 9-point win over Northwestern. I did see the 3-point win over Michigan. Problem is, I also saw the 11-point loss to Rutgers, the 42-point loss to Iowa, the 24-point shutout loss to Indiana, the 40-point loss to Ohio State, and the 15-point loss to Penn State. whooped them. He had 2 interceptions, but he had 3 touchdowns against Rutgers too. That was actually, ironically enough, raw numbers. Rutgers was his best game.
I'm on the over. I think and Chip kind of hit more of what it's about for me. Mid-February was when D'Antonio stepped down and Tucker comes in. Like, that is insane. Then you had all the COVID issues. The staff is more intact now. You're laying a foundation. I do think over the long haul, like in 3 to 4 years, we'll have a better appreciation for Mark D'Antonio accomplished at Michigan State. Like, I don't know if this team's going to the Rose Bowl anytime soon, but I do think this year will be a surprise to the upside. So I'm going to take the over.
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
And we bring it home with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. The non-conference has Temple and Delaware at home, and then they'll be heading to the Electric Dome to face Syracuse. The draw from the other division is at Northwestern, at Illinois, and then Wisconsin at home. Win total at 4.
Get him, bud.
I think we've all got this team power ranked or rated at the bottom of the division. I mean, who's gonna get out here with an argument that Rutgers is gonna peel off more than one conference win? You could make an argument for 3-0. I don't think they go 3-0 in the non-con, but that's what you need to do. Is you need to go and find Rutgers going to Ryan Field where the grass isn't mowed and you can't even run fast. Like, go and find Rutgers going to Champaign and being able to take down Burton, the Fighting Illini. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm on the under. Has anybody got a Rutgers over for me?
So this number is 4?
4.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this on Will Hill.
I got it. You know what the key is? Like the original. Yeah, it's New Jersey. If you switch the states to any of the other states, they'll give you a Rutgers number.
What is the juice on 4? Because I was going off 4.5 on Barstool with $1.25 to the over.
I don't. Let me check real quick. I don't think it was anything crazy, if I remember correctly. Sportsbook state. This computer's really slow, so you guys kill time.
Or, excuse me, plus 100 to the over.
So
the number's 4.
4.5 too?
I thought it was 4.5 with even money to the over minus $1.25 to the under.
Caesars Sportsbook.
Okay. I don't know how to change the states here. So you guys who are native CBS, not 24/7, you got to show me that later. I'm still going under. I don't care. I mean, like for the bets column, I'm definitely going to take 4.5 and pay $1.25 because I think 4 hits a decent percentage of the time. This team, what it did last year was admirable. They played hard. I think Greg Schiano will turn Rutgers around to where when they have a special year, it'll be like a bowl year, not a win 3 games type year. But like I give them like a 23% chance to win 5 games. I think what they did last year was completely unsustainable. It was essentially just turnover luck and special teams magic, 2 things that year to year are not repeatable skill for the most part. They fluctuate wildly. All of their kind of underlying base metrics were terrible. They were 105th in offensive SP+, 84th in defensive SP+, 34th in special teams, which again I don't think is sustainable. And their turnover luck was pretty insane. They also had nice timing about when they caught certain teams on the schedule. And were they the only team that did not have a COVID-related delay in the Big Ten? There weren't many that didn't have anything. Because I'm looking at the dates on their games here. 10-24, 31, 11-7, 14, 21, 28, 12-5, 12-12, 12-18. That's
as crisp as you could possibly in that league.
Again, probably not a sustainable edge compared to everybody else on in the conference. They were in 2 of their wins, by the way. This should have been a 1-win team last year, maybe a 2-win. You can argue a 2-win team if you want. They were 14% win expectancy against Maryland and won. They were 12% against Purdue and won. That's just not
But what were they?
I think Greg Schiano hasn't go in the right direction, but this ain't it to me.
No, I agree that they did have a lot of turnover luck as far as like their opponents' turnovers because it was well above the average. But if you look at points off turnovers, the points off turnover margin was only 5 points. So it's not like they did a great job of taking advantage of it. But I'm on a push. And by the way, the juice is 110 to each side. If I have to go to either side, I'm gonna go to an under before I go to the over because I think 3 and 9 is far more likely than 5 and 7. But I don't think this is the same kind of Rutgers team we're used to. Like Chip, you mentioned the non-con. I think there's a pretty decent chance they can go 3-0 in the non-con, but it'll depend on what Syracuse we get in 2021. I think is going to be the ultimate decider there. But I think they're going 2-1 at worst. So then when it comes to conference play, I think that Maryland game, I don't think is unwin. I think that's a game they can win. Indiana is a game they can win. Illinois is a game they can win. Northwestern's a game they can win. Michigan State's a game they can win. The problem is, as we've mentioned with a few teams already, is like that Northwestern, the Illinois, and the Indiana game are all on the road, which makes it more difficult. So I would lean under before I go over, but I think 4 is probably where they end up.
What is that line against Temple?
It is
the opening line, opening week.
Yeah.
I was looking for that too. I think that's a win automatic.
14. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to bet Temple money line there. I'll tell you guys right now before the Locks pod. They were not a better team. They were not a better team than Temple was last year.
You guys
Temple
are forgetting the pride of New Jersey, who's right up there with Bruce Springsteen, who cut his teeth at Ramapo High School there, right down the road from the stadium. This guy's bringing back all the good vibes from the dynasty that he built up. They had 3 wins against the Big Ten last year. 3. I think they're going to start 3-0. There's going to be all kind of excitement. Everyone's going to be pumped up. Here it comes. They're back. Now I think it comes to a screeching halt. But all I need to get is one more for a push, which I think could easily come. And sorry, Tom, but I think Illinois is a winnable game. I think Northwestern is a winnable game. I think Maryland's a winnable game. Like I see a few, like 3 toss-up games, and I only need 1 to get a push and 2 to get the win. Give me the over for Rutgers.
I'd say as a general rule, if you say all I need to do is get 1 more to get a push, you might want to bet the under.
This is belief. All right. This is the division of belief. Danny's on Indiana. He's got Rutgers.
I switched on Indiana. I switched. Don't forget. That's why I was a little light on over, so I did have to take an over here at the bottom.
Yeah. So Danny on an island for the Scarlet Knights.
I do want to say though, for any Rutgers fans that listen to this show, you're going to see on CBSSports.com this week a piece of content that ranks the best schools in each state. I want to say that I disavow the choice for New Jersey.
They put Princeton.
Yeah. I think Rutgers is the best program in the state of New Jersey.
I think so.
So don't yell at the Cover 3 podcast.
It wasn't us. Oh, I will be on CBS Sports HQ later, echoing those sentiments, Tom. So don't worry.
Please do. Yell it from the rooftops.
I will.
You do not want a bunch of New Jersey people mad at you.
It's true. It's very, very true. He is Tom Fernelli. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Coming up next, we'll be back in your feed with those Big Ten West win totals. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.